I'd like to talk about listening, the benefits of listening and the benefits of listening well, and how to listen to someone who's grieving as well, and some experiences of mine, and I'll share some of those experiences with you later on in the video. But first of all, I'd like to say hello. I'm Ghazala at the Heart and Soul Cafe. If you're here for the first time, thank you so much for coming by. And if you've been here before, then I'm so grateful that you've come back again. Thank you so much. So listening. If I sort of think back to when I was at school, we were told to sometimes listen, pay attention, Ghazala. And you think, oh, I was, talking to my friend, etc., etc. I better listen now. We're told to listen, but we're not really actually given any lessons on how to listen effectively. We're just expected to know how to do it. And I feel that a lot of us can improve our skills of listening. And let's have a look at some aspects of that. So first of all, I'd like to say that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and if we use that as a sort of a ratio to sort of go forward with, and you're listening and talking, maybe we could be listening for 70% of the time and talking for 30% of the time. That might be a good way to sort of start off. And in most societies, we've learned to have conversations where it's almost like as if we're taking in turns. As if, someone says something and then it's your turn, you say something, then it's that person's turn, they say something. And, it's very sort of much the societal norm to be able to sort of communicate and have conversations in that way. And it's almost like a little bit of a competitive thing. So it's a bit like watching a tennis match with the ball being hit from one side of the court to the other, and then to the other, and then to the other, and it sort of carries on like that. And if I was listening to someone, let's say if someone was in distress in any way, and I was there, going through all the actions of listening intensively, but if I'm too busy thinking about what am I going to say next when this person pauses, then I'm not actually listening. I'm too busy thinking about what my reaction is going to be. All right? So we need to think about that. And I think a lot of us do that. And it's not that we're to blame or we're blaming anyone for doing that. It's just how we work, how we do things. And, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just pointing out that we can maybe listen more effectively. So I think what we're afraid of sometimes is having pauses in the middle of a conversation. And then there was an awkward pause. Why is it an awkward pause? Why does it have to be an awkward pause? Or sometimes people refer to it as a pregnant pause. Why can't we just say, okay, you've just shared this with me and I just want to sit with it for a few minutes, just a minute or so before I respond? How many times have we walked away from having a conversation thinking, oh, do you know what? I wish I hadn't have said that. I think it came across in a way that I didn't actually want it, how I was actually delivering it. And it might have been something to do with my tone. Maybe I just responded too quickly. And, we can be so honest and say, I just want to sit with that before I respond. Is that okay? And then the other person doesn't think that you're blanking them and they've just told you something and you've completely ignored them. They're not feeling that because they know why. Right? So I think, listening effectively is something that, we need to just focus a little bit in on. And then I'll get into how, listening to someone who's grieving, I'll get into that as well as I go on, and an experience I had as well. I'll share that. So let's say if somebody was to come to you and say, oh, I'm struggling at the moment because my pet cat died yesterday and I'm really, and you say, oh, yes, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. And the other person might think, do you? How do you know that? Well, because I had a pet goldfish that died 15 years ago. Okay. Again, we start, making it about us, not about them. and we bring whatever it is, the conversation, we bring it to, to ourselves. And that's how most people sort of have conversations, and that's how most people, that's how they listen, because they just try and retrieve something that they maybe have experienced. And it might not have anything to do with what that person has just shared with you. And then, we can't compare losses either. We can't compare, someone's cat, passing away and someone's goldfish passing away. I'm not saying one's more important than the other. What I'm saying is we can't compare each thing, item or thing or person or living thing that passes away has a relationship with that person who feels the loss of that thing or person or pet, whatever it is that's passed away. And as we've talked about grief before, you can have symptoms of grief where you might have lost your job, or you might have gone through a divorce, or something else. So it could be you still experience symptoms of grief at any other kind of loss of something, right? So that's important. When it comes to listening, we also we need to listen without judgment. We need to keep our biases to one side, and that's not easy to do either when you're listening, because you've already made up your mind about certain things, and then it's very hard for whatever you've made your mind up about to erase that. And that's your, those are your biases that have set in already. So you've already made maybe some kind of a judgment. And to listen without judgment means practicing it. Okay. So we're not judging. We're not, thinking about what that person's, beliefs are or anything. Anything else is not coming into it. It's just based on what that person is sharing with you. You listening to something that they are sharing with you, and nothing else is coming into it, which isn't that easy to do. And then accepting what that person is saying as well isn't always easy, because you've already got preconceptions of what that person's saying, what they've experienced, and your own take on that. And being genuine. If you've asked someone, how are you, how have you been doing lately, and what's happening with you, what's happening in your life, if you've given that invitation to them, then you need to be genuine with that, meaning that you don't want to be then 10 minutes later, if they are offloading, if they are sharing, you're rolling your eyes, or you're looking at your watch and thinking, well, how long is this person going to take, because that kind of thing. It doesn't want to be like that either. So if you are listening effectively, then you're listening, you're there for them. All right. So one experience that I had, coming back to listening to someone who is grieving, I lost my son 4 years ago, and I've shared that on other videos. I was at a social gathering, and somebody that I know, I can't call her a friend as such, because it's not someone that is my go-to person, but someone who is an acquaintance, I would say. And I could see her sort of looking over at me a couple of times, and trying to make eye contact with me, and then I noticed that she very slowly made her way over, and I was sort of sat pretty much as I am now, sort of on the corner of a sofa, and there was the rest of the sofa free. I was sat there with my hands on my lap, just chatting with a couple of other people in the room, etc. She came over and sat next to me, and just put her hand on my hands and said, how are you, Ghazala? How have you been? What's going on with you at the moment? And it was very genuine, and very, much, making that eye contact and genuinely asking me. Now, so those of you who are experiencing grief know that, would probably agree with me, and you might not, but please comment, that some days you can feel, oh, I don't want anyone, addressing what I'm going through and what's happening with me. I just don't want to go there. And then other days you could feel, it'd be nice if someone sort of asked and I could just offload a little bit. Well, that day was one of those days where I felt almost welcomed somebody coming and asking me. And she so genuinely asked me as well, that she really meant it. So I started off saying, oh, well, actually, I have good days, but, lately it's been a little bit, and I think that's about as far as I got. That's about as far as I got with, I hadn't actually completed one sentence where she then said, oh, yes, I know exactly, how it must be and how well, how do you know how it must be? You don't actually let me finish a sentence. And then she just started, started talking about her mother, losing her mother, and her mother was, I think, in her late 80s. And then, I don't want to make that mistake about comparing one loss to another, but, there's something natural about losing a parent, in their late 80s compared to losing your child at the age of 22. Yeah, please comment if you disagree, but that's how I feel. Although I'm not comparing on the basis of how much you're feeling. I'm comparing at the nature, the natural course of, order of things. And that brings me to like Veloma. If you didn't see my Veloma video where I share, what Veloma means, and, the fact that's against the natural order of things. And so it's very much, talking about, very much about, taking that away, giving that invitation. Yeah. So you give that invitation to someone to talk, and you're being quite specific, what you want them to talk about. That was quite obvious. It wasn't that she wanted me to share latest cake recipe, information with her. It wasn't that. She was actually asking, how am I feeling, after the loss of my child, is what she was asking. And then she very quickly took it to, talking about her mother and how ill her mother was. And I listened. I went, carried on, and I was thinking, yeah, I wasn't listening very effectively then, because I felt that I had been shortchanged, that I was willing, and I'm not always willing, but I was willing to share and express with this person that's not really a close friend, but somebody who I felt doesn't know me that well, where I could sort of share and possibly not be sort of judged in any way. But I felt at that time, I felt as if it was quite a safe little moment to just offload a little bit. And she offered and then took it away very, very quickly. And, I didn't then go back to it or try to go back to it at all. So it's, no one's to blame. I'm not blaming her. I'm all this video is really about being mindful about it and thinking about how, if you ask someone, how are you? We tend to use that as a greeting. We almost use it instead of saying hello, So if we're saying hello, then we mean hello. And if we're asking someone, how are you? Then we should really maybe wait for a response and wait for an answer. And I'm guilty of that. Before I trained as a, mental health instructor, I think I did that a lot. I would be, see someone in the corridor and say, hi, how are you? And then I'm all the way halfway down the corridor and, someone's maybe not even opened their mouth yet, So, we can all be guilty of it. But it's a matter of being mindful about it and listening. When we're listening, then we're actually listening. We're not there to fix things. We're not there to make it all right. We're not there to, if we do ask someone how they're doing when they are experiencing loss, they've just gone through, an awful, life event. We don't want to say things like, let's say if somebody has lost their husband, like, oh, don't worry, you'll get married again. Well, that's not really the thing that's at the forefront of that person's mind. By you saying you'll get married again is almost, condensing someone's down into a tiny, tiny atom and say, well, that one's broken, just buy a new one, and we don't, when it comes to human beings and relationships, I know we live in a very disposable society now, with how we live our lives and how we purchase and how we want things right now. And, before we've even put in the order, it's already been delivered type of thing, life. But it doesn't happen that way when it comes to loss and relationships and losing loved ones. So we need to be careful about that. And, you know, I've had clients share with me, you know, I've lost a child where someone's come and said, you know, don't worry, you'll have more children. But, you know, it doesn't matter if you have 100 children, it's not going to fill the void of that child that you've lost. And, you know, we know that. And don't you think that person knows that? You know, they've had children. They know they can probably have more children, but that's, you know, the person who's listening thinks that they're saying the right thing, but it's not always the right thing. To listen is just to listen. And if you don't know what to say, I don't know what to say, but I'm so glad that I'm here, you know, and you're sharing it with me. That's what you would need to say. You don't need to say anything else or try and fix it or feel that you need to fill every pause or every, you know, silence. It's about that. You just say, can I sit with you? I don't know what to say. I don't know if I'm going to be any use to you, but, you know, let me know if there's anything I can do for you, if there's anything I can do that, you know, you need right now that I might be able to do for you. And, you know, just say, but I'm here. And I just want to sit with you. And that would be it. And that person, I think, would really appreciate that and respect you for that, you know, because there's plenty of people that are going to come along and say, you know, try and fix it for you. You can't fix, you know, losing someone unless you can somehow magically bring that person back. You can't replace that person, and you can't just come over and, you know, wave your magic wand and make it all right. It doesn't happen that way. So listening is giving yourself 100% and listening and trying to be empathetic, try and put yourself in that person's shoes. And that's not easy to do, especially if you haven't had that loss that person has had, if they're grieving, if you haven't experienced that. And even if you have experienced that, you still don't know, you know, what that person is going through. I can't, you know, counsel women who have experienced child loss. I never say I understand your pain, because I don't understand that person, that mother's pain. I'm not that mother. I am me. I am a mother to my children. My relationships with my children are unique. And, you know, it's not the same as another mother's relationship with her child. So how can I ever know that I understand what you're going through? And then it's where you know, how the climate is inside, where you are at in your life when you've had loss, when you experience loss. It's all about that. It's not about experiencing loss and that's it, and it's all a uniform thing between, you know, all parents and children, or all parents or all people that have experienced loss. It's a unique thing, like your fingerprint. It's unique. It has its own intensity of pain, of symptoms of grief, and it'll take its own time for that person to get to a place where they're functioning, or they're living their life, or they're not ever functioning. You know, because we know that to be fact as well. That not all people, not all of us that experience, you know, a loss ever get to a place where they're functioning, and we know that. So it's a very personal thing. So to say, you know, I understand is probably not the right thing to say, because you don't actually understand, even if you've experienced something very, very similar. So I hope that this video has been of some help to you. And if you feel that it could, you know, it might be a help to somebody else, please share this video with them. Again, thank you so much for stopping by, for being a part of this video. My long-term goal is to build a community, and I'm sort of started saying this pretty much at the end of every video. My goal is, you know, my goal to turn to YouTube isn't about, you know, making money. It's not. It's about me sharing, which has been therapeutic for me, because some of the things I'm sharing on these videos, I've never actually shared with anybody. And it's been 4 years since I lost my son. So there's that aspect. The other aspect is that I think I felt that I came to a bit of a brick wall or a dead end, although I started up a charity in my son's name. After losing him, I've started volunteering for the charity where I counsel women. who have lost children. But I still felt that, I felt that I needed to do something more. And that really is the purpose of this, turning to YouTube, is to feel that I am possibly doing something more, reaching out, making my personal experiences public like this isn't being easy. It's not something that comes easy to me. It's the first time I've ever done this, but it's something that I felt that I would probably only gain from doing it, not losing anything. So that's really why I'm here, to build a community where we can help each other. And my long-term goal is to do some work, in my son's name, and I'll share that in other videos as we go on, just depending on how this works out. If I do feel that we've built a community, or is it just that I'm talking to my phone, every other day or every day, and that's it, and if that's it and that's as far as it goes, then that's it. I'm talking to my phone and recording these videos for no one to ever listen to. And if that's how it is, that's how it is. But thank you so much. If you are listening, thank you. I so appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you. Take care.